I started to start with Tom Jones' song Delilah, but I decided not to. But we are in Judges, and we're actually going to start in chapter 13. And we're going to start in chapter 13 because while that's not yet the story of Delilah and Samson, it is a necessary, at least in my view, starting point for us as we move through this. Now remember, we're in Judges. So the book of Judges is that 200-year time of history between the coming into the promised land under Joshua and Saul being anointed the first king. There's about 200 years in there, and you have what are called, in the book of Judges, interestingly enough, judges. And these judges did not all the time rule the entire country. Judges perhaps ruled or judged only in various parts of the country. Of the promised land, in a couple of tribes, for example. So often we think the judges were over the entire land, but they overlap some in time. Now also remember that the cycle of the book of Judges is simply this. The people sin. God judges their sin by sending in usually an outside nation to conquer them or conquer a region. The people under the oppression of this outside country cry out to the Lord for forgiveness of their sins, usually idolatry. God hears their cry, sends a judge who is usually a warrior judge in some sense, who defeats the conquering nation, and the people live under the blessing of God until that judge dies. And when that judge dies, guess what? The people go back to sinning again. And that's the cycle that you find all the way through the book of Judges. Now, Samson is a judge. We know that from this story in the book of Judges. Look at verse 13 in chapter 1. It begins, "Again the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, so the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. So that verse right there, chapter 13, verse 1, sums up really the book of Judges. The cycle, at least the first part of the cycle, the people did evil in the eyes of the Lord judges them by sending in a conquering nation. And in this case, this particular area of the Promised Land is under the rule of the Philistines for 40 years. So we have in chapter 13 the birth of Samson. The birth of Samson, and I'm already going to tell you, I'm going to say Samuel at some point in time tonight. But we're talking about Samson and Delilah. The birth of Samson is one of the most phenomenal stories in the Old Testament. If you don't know this story, we're going to walk through it very briefly tonight. But it is an amazing story. In chapter 13, we see that there is a certain man of Zorah, in verse 2, of Zorah, named Manoah, of the clan of the Danites, and his wife was sterile and remained childless. Isn't it fascinating the number of childless women that God has in the Bible? And sometimes He delivers them in their old age to have a child. We think of Sarah. Who else might be one in the Bible besides Sarah? Elizabeth, yes.
Well, it took Rachel a long time.
Took Rachel a long time, exactly. And Hannah might be another one who was childless, Hannah, the mother of Samuel. And so it is here with Samson's mother. She is childless. And then look at verse 3. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, "You are sterile and childless, but you are going to conceive and have a son. Now see that you drink no wine or other fermented drink, and that you do not eat anything unclean, because you will conceive and give birth to a son. No razor may be used on his head, because the boy is to be a Nazirite, set apart to God from birth. And he will begin the deliverance of Israel from the hands of the Philistines." So, if you read the passage carefully, it is my opinion and belief that this is another appearance in the Old Testament of Jesus Christ himself. And in fact, Christ will appear to Samson's mother twice before he is born. Now, these occasions are extraordinarily rare. And this happens twice to his mother. And the angel of the Lord, which is the captain of the host in Joshua, Christ, we believe, appears and says, "This child which you will conceive will be under a Nazirite vow." Now, a Nazirite vow, you can go back in and look at what the components of that are. But the basically there were three components. If you go back into Numbers 6, you see these. Refrain from alcohol or any intoxicating drink, not even raisins or grapes. No cutting of the hair, and you're not supposed to touch dead bodies. The angel added here that his mother was to even begin a sort of Nazirite vow while she carried him in her womb. So it's fascinating here to begin with that the Nazirite vow that Samson lives under his entire life is begun by his mother, so that he is not contaminated even in the womb. Now, as we understand a Nazirite vow, we see this several times in the Old Testament. It's usually taken on for only a period of time. But Samson is one of the few that lives under a Nazirite vow for his entire life. Well, verse 6, the woman went to her husband and told him, "A man of God came to me. He looked like an angel of God, very awesome." Well, yeah, I guess he would be pretty awesome if it was Jesus Christ himself before the incarnation. "I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't tell me his name. But he said to me, 'You'll conceive and give birth to a son. Now then, drink no wine or other fermented drink. Do not eat anything unclean, because the boy will be a Nazirite from God from birth until the day of his death.' Then Manoah prayed to the Lord, 'O Lord, I beg you, let the man of God you sent to us come again to teach us how to bring the boy up.'" I don't know if he believes his wife at this point or not. It would appear that perhaps he doesn't, because the angel has already told him what he's supposed to do. Nonetheless, he makes this prayer. "And God heard Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman." I think that's fabulous. He prays, he wants confirmation, but God goes back to the woman the second time. Well, she goes and gets him and says, "Hey, he's here." And so they come back. And so verse 12, so Manoah asked him, "When your words are fulfilled, what is to be the rule for the boy's life and work?" And then he says, "Look, your wife's got to do what I told her to do, right? You keep not believing the woman that I've already spoken to." Then he tries to kind of, and I'm not sure here whether he's trying to maneuver and play this angel, this pre-incarnation of Christ, or what he's doing. But he offers him something to eat, which was in that culture the hospitable thing to do, but also you were often indebted if you ate. Verse 16, the angel of the Lord replied, even though you detain me, I will not eat any of your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, offer it to the Lord. But Manoah did not realize that this was an angel of the Lord. Then Manoah inquired of the angel of the Lord, what is your name, so that we may honor you when your words come true? Another absolutely fascinating statement. The angel replied, why do you ask my name? It is beyond understanding. Yahweh's name is beyond the grasp. You are not going to have my name to use it as you would like. It is beyond what even you can comprehend. Then Manoah took a young goat together with the grain offering and sacrificed it on the rock to the Lord. And the Lord did an amazing thing while Manoah and his wife watched. As the flame blazed up from the altar towards heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame, which kind of sounds like what in the Gospels? When Christ ascends right into heaven. Seeing this, Manoah and his wife fell to their faces on the ground. And the angel of the Lord did not show himself again. And they finally realized it. And of course, then the husband says, oh, we're doomed, we're doomed. And the wife says, are you crazy? Why would he have come twice? If we were doomed, he'd just killed us the first time, right? The dad doesn't seem to be the sharpest knife, perhaps, in the drawer. And the woman here seems to be, if we were studying brilliant girls of the Bible, this woman would perhaps be in that. So, as Samson is born, his name means little son, and he has a special status. He is the only judge that is set apart in a Nazirite vow and has two theophanies or appearances of the Lord before he's born. Chapter 14, we're not going to spend much time here. It just is about Samson wants to marry, but he wants to marry a Philistine woman. Now, God has been really open and honest about this. They are not to marry outside of the nation of Israel. So when he wants to take a Philistine wife, he is already stepping out of the Lord's commandments. And if you read through here, he goes to marry her, but there's some fighting that he gets involved in on the way, and they end up giving his wife to one of the other guys that's there at the marriage. Not exactly a great love story up to this point. But there is a lot to learn here. Well, after that marriage, or kind of marriage, because they end up giving the wife to somebody else, Samson gets mad at the Philistines and he takes it out on them. He slays, in chapter 15, 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey. This guy is, it's fascinating because we see these great heroic efforts of Samson, who was also known for his wit as he gives riddles to people in his story as well. But we are trying to get to Delilah, so I'm not going to spend too much time there. But Samson because he gets mad at the Philistines and kills this 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone, we see that he is ruling by his own emotions, right? We don't ever read where the Lord says, kill 1,000 Philistines. And we certainly haven't seen him save one Israelite yet. He's just kind of living by his own feelings. And to be honest with you, he's kind of a sex-crazed judge. It's amazing the people God uses. I think that we see this so today as well. I mean, if you turn on the TV and you watch any commercials, I mean, they use sexuality to sell everything from ice cream to Jeep tires. I mean, it's just amazing how they have perverted everything as to be, in some way it seems, on TV about sex anymore. And we buy on our senses rather than our sense, right? We buy on our emotions. The commercials go for the gusto, right? Go for what feels good. And Samson is certainly a judge that does a lot of that. All right, well, let's get to Samson and Delilah in chapter 16. One day Samson went to Gaza. Now, what's he doing in Gaza? Gaza is in the Philistine territory. It's not in the Promised Land. He's a judge for the Israelites. He's got no business going down to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. All right, so we got 2 strikes against him already. He went to spend the night with her. The people of Gaza were told Samson is here, so they surrounded so they waited for him at night. They surrounded the place and waited for him at night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying at dawn we'll kill him. They're mad at him because he's a judge and he's killed so many Philistines. So Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up and took the doors of the city gate together with the 2 posts and tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the hill that faces Hebron. Now, just reading that, you might not really realize this. Hebron is almost 40 miles away from Gaza and 2,000 feet higher than Gaza. So Samson maybe doesn't carry him all the way. He carries him to the hill that faces Hebron, but he carries him up a height of 2,000 feet over the course of probably at least 30 or 35 miles. Not the feat that the average Joe pulls off. But nobody knows the source of Samson's strength. If you watch movies of this time, and there are several out there on Samson and Delilah, Samson is always portrayed as like this big, hunking, beefy guy, right? Like a big wrestler, pumped up on steroids, really a tall guy. Andre the Giant, kind of, that just dates me with guys. That doesn't help you all at all. So this big, huge human being. But nobody knows his strength. Nobody knows where his strength came from. If he was a big, bulky guy, where would his strength come from? His muscles, right? You could see that he's a big, strong guy. I would argue that Samson was a kind of average Joe-looking guy. Because only then would you attribute his strength to the Lord and not to his own body. But he takes these gates out and he carries them up the hill, just making the people all the more mad at him. And then verse 4, sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. Now, we don't know if Delilah was a Philistine or a Jew, but my money is that she is a Philistine because she so readily cooperates with the Philistine authorities. But he falls in love with her. He truly falls in love with this woman. Now, of the 4 females that are mentioned in Samson's life, only Delilah is mentioned by name. You got his mother, we don't know her name. We got that first wife, we don't know her name. We got the prostitute in Gaza, we don't know her name. But we do know Delilah's name. And she's mentioned, interestingly enough, 7 times in the passage. Now, as I say, I think it would be my guess that she is a Philistine. So the Philistine leaders come to her wanting to know what the source of his strength is. Look at verse 5. The rulers of the Philistines, probably there were 5 major Philistine cities, so it's probably the rulers or at least representatives of those 5, went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his strength and how we can overpower him so that we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." Now, you may think of Judas here selling out for 30 pieces of silver, but this amount of silver would have set this, this was unprecedented. This is kingly wealth. And so this would have certainly set her up for life. It's clear, I think, from the passage that Samson loves Delilah, but Delilah never says she loves him, right? She uses all of her cunning and all of her shall I say, womanly gifts to seduce him, but we never see or hear that she loves him. Now, the Philistines want to humiliate him, right? They want to subdue him. They don't want to just kill him. They want to tie him up and subdue him first so that they can humiliate him, just like he has humiliated them by tearing out the gates of the wall around Gaza and carrying them all the way into the promised land. Now, we know Samson's strength comes from, it's manifest here in his hair, but his strength is not in his hair. Where does his strength come from? God. Exactly. We see in the text several times that the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson, and he did this and he did that. But it is kind of pulled out and singled out in this one part of his Nazirite vow, which is his big old head of hair. Now, we don't know how old he is, but his hair was long enough to put in a loom and weave. So I don't know how he piled up all that hair on his head, but he obviously did. But it's the visible attribute that we associate with his Nazirite vow is his hair, but his strength comes from the Lord. So verse 6, so Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your strength and how you can be tied up and subdued." Now, I don't know, ladies, if he's thinking, what here? I don't know if he's smart enough to think through this, that she's working the Philistines, or he thinks something else is going on. I don't know. Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me up with 7 fresh thongs or sandal strings that have not been dried, I will become weak as any other man." And the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh thongs that had not been dried, and she tied him with them. Then the men hid in the room, And she called to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. But he snapped the thongs as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to the flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Now again, Samson may be fulfilling that old adage, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree with his dad. I don't know how smart and brilliant Samson is at this point. If the Philistines are hiding in a room in the house and she tries to tie him up with this little bit of string and says the Philistines are owed to you, and he breaks them. How smart this guy is, I really don't know. But what we do know is she is brilliant, right? She knows how to use all of her woman's charm on Samson. She basically repeats here the first time what the leaders told her to say. All right, verse 10. Then Delilah said to Samson, you made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now, tell me how you can be tied. Now, notice the step up in the pouty lip probably comes out, right, at this point. And she's saying to him, look, you're making fun of me. Then he said, if anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I will become weak as any other man. So Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them. Then with men hidden in the room, she called to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. But he snapped the ropes off his arms as if they were threads. He's playing a game with her, and she's playing with his life. This woman is truly a bad-to-the-bone woman, right? She is just looking out for herself. She is totally consumed with, I'm going to get 5,500 pieces of silver and go retire in the Bahamas or somewhere, right? Verse 13. Then Delilah said to Samson, until now you've been making a fool of me and lying to me. How then can you be tied? He replied, if you weave 7 braids of my head into fabric on a loom and tighten it with a pin, I'll become as weak as any other man. So while he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids of his head, wove them into a fabric, and tightened it with a pin. Then she called, I don't even begin to be able to play that picture out in my mind, right? Somehow she's got the loom there now all of a sudden, and the commentaries say, well, this is something that they did on the floor. And she had pegs in the floor, and she's weaving his hair.
Then he went to sleep like that.
And he's sleeping like that, right? Exactly. Again, like Jesus in the boat. I mean, I don't know. But he's sleeping like that.
God has faith.
Again, she called to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And he woke up from his sleep, pulled up the pin and the loom with the fabric. Then she said to him, she pulls out the master card. Right? This is her ace that's been up her sleeve the entire time. How can you say, I love you, when you won't confide in me? Now, at this point, she's got the pouty lip, probably some teary eyes going on here, and she's just pulling out every stop to get this. I mean, her charm is flowing like Niagara Falls, and he's about to go over it, literally. How can you say I love you? I'm just hearing that. How can you say when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength. Verse 16. With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was what? Tired to death. not judging, she's nagging. Night in, night out. Nag, nag, nag. Tell me, tell me, tell me. You don't love me. So finally she broke him, right? By the way, ladies, this is not, I am not going to teach that this is a lesson how to get out of what you want from your husband, right? I want it made very clear that is not a lesson that we're going to take away from tonight.
I think we've already figured that out for ourselves.
And the pouty lips on the video.
Yeah. Verse 17, so he told her everything. No razor has ever been used on my head. I would think she would have figured that out by now. You know, if his hair is long enough to weave fabric in a loom on, she should know that he hadn't had a haircut in a while. No razor has ever been used on my head, he said, because I have been a Nazarite set apart to God since birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. Now, if his strength is coming from God, not from his hair, how does cutting his hair off make him as weak as any other man?
He's breaking it down.
He's what?
Breaking it down.
Breaking his vow. Exactly. He has been set apart to God from, this story is a story everybody could use in the pro-life movement, because if you don't believe life starts at conception, this story speaks directly to that. His mother must must uphold the Nazarite vow from the time of his conception, so that he can be a Nazarite for life. Sidebar. But she finally finds out, and his breaking in an obvious way of this Nazarite vow will be the undoing of him, because he is in essence breaking his vow to God. I taught the high school students in Bible study, not in Bible class, but in Bible study today, what Paul and Peter teach is that all authority is over you is put there by God. God puts all authority. It doesn't matter whether it's your parents, your teachers, your coaches, whomever it might be who is an authority over you, all the way up to the president. God has put that person there over you for you to obey. And if you don't obey that authority, Paul makes it explicitly clear, Peter makes it explicitly clear. If you disobey that authority, except when it transgresses God's law, if you disobey, you are not just disobeying that authority, you are turning your back on God, who has put that authority over you. And so, Samson here is not just giving up his Nazarite vow, he is turning his back on God, because God has put him under a Nazarite vow. Samson, a Nazarite vow was usually chosen by somebody who was going to go through a particular time of trial or whatever. Samson has no choice. God puts him under his Nazarite vow. He doesn't choose to be under it. And so when he has his hair cut off, he is turning his back on God. And she is playing him like a fiddle. Verse 18, when Delilah saw that he told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, come back once more. He has told me everything. Now, they may be like thinking that she's like the boy who cried wolf at this point. But she says, come back once more. So the rulers of the Philistines returned with their silver in their hands. Now she's got the big smile on her face. And having put him to sleep on her lap, don't ask me. Just don't ask me. I'm not going there. She called a man to shave the 7 braids of his hair. I guess if he can sleep through getting his hair woven into fabric on a loom, he can sleep through this. She's worn him out, evidently. And so began to subdue him. And his strength left him. Then she said, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And he woke from his sleep and thought, I'll go out as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Ladies, there is a huge lesson just in that verse. If he is so out of touch with the Lord's presence in his life that he doesn't know when the Lord is with him and when the Lord has left him, he is a poor judge and has a poor understanding of what his life has been supposed to have be about. Then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza. So he went to Gaza to see the prostitute, fell in love with somebody else, and now he's back in Gaza. Binding him with bronze shackles, they set him grinding in the prison. So he's gone from being a judge killing 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey to grinding meal blind in a prison in Gaza. But those who were in charge of him forgot one key little fact. The hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. You know, you just forget the little details sometimes, right? And those are the ones that come back to bite you. Well, you know the rest of the story. Samson is brought out. All the Philistines gather, all the leaders and the upper class gather at the temple to celebrate, and they're going to bring Samson out to entertain. Exactly what he's going to do to entertain, we're not sure. Maybe he gives riddles to the people as he had earlier. Maybe he was starting to show signs of strength and they were going to let him, break the concrete blocks, or, well, they didn't have concrete blocks then, but, break the clay tablets or whatever. I don't know. But anyhow, he's brought out to be humiliated before his captors. And as I say, the rest of the story is that he prays to God for, in essence, forgiveness and one more act of strength. Verse 28, and Samson prayed to the Lord, O sovereign Lord, remember me, O God. Please strengthen me just once more, and let me, with one blow, get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Now, he's a judge who's supposed to begin to deliver the people from the Philistines. But he wants to kill a bunch of them, not for God's glory or to save the people. He wants to kill a bunch of them because they gouged out his eyes. Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, and bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one, his left hand on the other, Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than when he lived. Delilah is a bad woman. She cares nothing for Samson's Nazirite vow, although Samson doesn't appear to care a whole lot about it himself. And she uses all of her feminine ways to seduce him into betraying God. We don't ever hear from Delilah again. Once she has his hair cut off, she was on the next flight out of Gaza, right? She is never heard from again. She takes her silver and runs. Her whole life, her whole story in the Bible is one of self-promotion and self-aggrandizement. Now, in the book, on page 125, you have a couple of lessons that the author gives us from the story. The first one is, the love of a man is to be treasured. The love of a man is to be treasured. Samson loved her. He truly loved her. The scripture is pretty clear about that. And yet she never reciprocates. She never tells him that she loves him. And certainly never lives up to that love. She uses his love for her own ill-gotten gains. And so I would remind those of you who are married that the love that your husband brings to you is a love that is to be treasured. The second lesson is there is silver and gold aren't very good company. Wow, you could teach that lesson for all of time, because we see so often women leave marriages for the money they can get, or they use other start to say tricks of the trade. That's a really bad word. They use other means to obtain money, either by some sort of ill-gotten gain, and certainly the love of a husband would overreign that. Money can't buy happiness is a very true adage. Weakness needed to be strengthened, not exposed. Weaknesses need to be strengthened, not exposed. This is one that goes both ways, men and women. So often, either in public or in private, we make, and we say it's under the guise of trying to be funny, but we often will make a statement that cuts our spouse down. Ladies, men have very fragile egos, as if you didn't know that already. And and he also, every man has weaknesses. And when God created Eve, what does he say that she's created for? To be a what? A helpmate, a helper. And a helper strengthens weaknesses, not exposes them, not makes fun of them, not plays them up. Samson here in our story had a weakness for women. That's no doubt about it. And Delilah exploits that rather than loving him. She exploits that. So just be careful. And I encourage the guys on Thursday morning in the same way in another study. Be careful what you say about your spouse in public or on Facebook or any kind of other social media, because what you may think is a joke often cuts to the quick. And lastly, for a happy home, keep your scissors out of reach. I thought that was kind of funny. But I think the more important thing there is, don't let temptation in the door in your marriages. Don't let temptation in the door. Keep it at bay. Run from temptation. whether it's temptation for another man, for money, or for whatever it might be. Pornography, alcohol, whatever it might be. Keep temptation away. Put those scissors up, right? So that you can't pull them out.
Explain that Proverbs 14:1 at the end of the chapter.
A wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish tears hers down. I think what that basically means there, Suzanne, is that a wise woman does things to build up her family, build up her home, and foolish women, by comments or by actions, destroys their home. A divorce can destroy a home. Alcoholism, pornography, all of these things can destroy a home rather than building it up.